In modern apologetics, many of you are familiar with what is called the Islamic dilemma.
What is the Islamic dilemma?
The Islamic dilemma.
The Quran is a lie.
If the Quran is true, then I have to conclude that the Quran is false.
It is a logical trap. If the Quran is true, it affirms the Christian Gospels. But if the Gospels are true, the Quran is demonstrably false. Today, I want to present to you a parallel paradox within Western Christianity. I call it the Catholic Dogma dilemma. We're going to apply basic historical critical analysis to the Roman Catholic Church's claim of supreme infallible teaching authority. And we will see that by taking a late evolving piece of folklore, dogmatizing it out of sheer popularity, and tying it to eternal salvation, the Magisterium has created an inescapable epistemological trap. Let's begin with a simple premise: the bodily assumption of Mary, the claim that the mother of Jesus did not see bodily corruption but was physically assumed into heaven, would be, without question, the second greatest physical miracle of the New Testament era. Yet, when we look at the reliable first-century eyewitness documents, the Gospels, Acts, the epistles of Paul, what do we find? Absolute, deafening silence. The apostles were desperately trying to prove the reality of physical resurrection to a skeptical Greek and Jewish world. If Mary had bypassed the grave entirely, it would have been their ultimate secondary proof. Yet John, who was explicitly tasked by Christ with Mary's care, says nothing. Paul says nothing. For over 300 years, the Church Fathers say nothing. To a historian, this is our first friction point. The historical foundations are utterly silent. So, where does the story come from? It first appears in the 3rd to 5th centuries in anonymous pseudepigraphal texts known as the Transitus Mariae. This brings us to the second friction point, and it is devastating to the claim of a historically consistent magisterium. In 494 AD, Pope Gelasius I issued the Decretum Gelasianum. In it, the Bishop of Rome officially condemned these exact books as apocryphal, heretical, and banned them from the Church. Look at the timeline. The 494 AD papacy condemned the only historical vehicles carrying this story as heretical lies. Yet, in 1950, Pope Pius XII elevated the core premise of a banned heresy to the level of infallible, saving dogma. You cannot claim unbroken, consistent continuity when the 20th century papacy dogmatizes the very legends the 5th century papacy explicitly forbade. First, they argue, Gelasius banned the book, not the belief. They claim the specific books were banned for Gnostic errors, but a pure orthodox oral tradition of the Assumption existed concurrently. The rebuttal. This is an argument from a vacuum. There is zero documentary evidence of an orthodox Assumption tradition in the 5th century that did not rely entirely on the banned Transitus texts. To suggest a massive, miraculous tradition existed perfectly intact for 400 years without leaving a single trace in the writings of the early Church Fathers is historically untenable. This brings us to the ultimate consequential end of this dilemma. Why does this matter? Because in Catholicism, this is not a secondary, optional belief. Look at the words of Pope Pius XII when he declared this dogma. He explicitly bound it to salvation. He declared that if you deny this late evolving history, you have fallen away completely from the divine and Catholic faith. This is where the Roman Catholic framework sharply departs from mainline historic Christianity. For mainline Protestants, salvation is anchored to the historically attested, eyewitness-verified bodily resurrection of Jesus Christ. That is the cornerstone. But Rome has taken a 4th century piece of folklore, one their own early popes rejected, and weaponized it into a salvation tier issue. If you use standard critical analysis of historical biblical texts, the same analysis we use to defend the resurrection of Christ to secular scholars, you must reject the Assumption as a historical event. But if you do that, Rome says you lose your salvation. Conversely, if you accept the Assumption to save your Catholic salvation, you destroy the epistemological foundation of historical Christianity. You concede that evidence, scripture, and early church history do not matter. You concede that church authority does not merely equal scriptural authority, it effectively supersedes both scripture and history. If a church can declare an undocumented, late-evolving, formerly banned legend to be a mandatory historical truth upon pain of damnation, then that church is no longer a guardian of the faith handed down once for all. The modern magisterium becomes the ultimate creator of its own historical reality, and a faith disconnected from historical truth is no longer historical Christianity. If you've watched to the end, thank you. I hope this has challenged, inspired, and given you something meaningful to reflect on.